Hello and welcome to Superior Sisterhood, the Self-Care Sessions. I'm Nicole Maury. I'm a women's empowerment coach and the host of this series. And today I'm delighted to introduce everyone to Angela Gollat. Welcome, Angela.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. For those of you that don't yet know Angela, she's an artist, a spiritual thinker, and a creative guide. And Angela, I know you through many things in the community, but especially through the painting work that you do. I've had many friends that have taken your course, and I'm always envious of their beautiful creations. So if you could just get us started and tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do here.
So I'm from Thunder Bay. I'm born and raised here, and I feel really connected to the land and the people here. And, growing up in Thunder Bay, I very slowly discovered I was an artist. Of course, that's not something your parents kind of encourage you to do, is make art. It can be a hard way to make a living sometimes. But it was really my heart's calling, and it was like anyone else that finds their calling, it's something you can't really deny. And so I've just followed that path and been practicing and kind of marrying actually meditation and mindfulness in with my painting practice. And I've been doing that for, over a decade or more. And then maybe about 10 years ago, I started to invite other women who were really interested in what I was doing into that sphere with me, and started sharing what it feels like and what it looks like to do painting as a spiritual practice. And so I started my 7-week course as well eventually, which is called Painting as a Spiritual Practice. And we've had thousands of women come through and paint visionary paintings of themselves. Really, that practice is about being in the moment, practicing mindfulness and doing self-care, creating time for that kind of personal awareness. But also it's a space where we kind of discover more of who we are and who we want to become. And so our paintings really become representations of the best of ourselves and where we're heading, and reminders to us when we look at them sitting on the wall. They kind of remind us about the truth of who we are beyond all the chaos of our lives sometimes, and the details and the responsibility. There's, of course, something way bigger inside of all of us. And so these images remind us of that bigger self inside.
Beautiful. I love that. And so much of what you said underlies the work that I do, knowing who we truly are and what matters to us. And so I would love if you could kind of start this conversation out, sharing up maybe a personal experience that you may have had with this whole idea of self-care.
Yeah. Well, I made art all growing up, and had a period of time, probably like many women do, when you have babies and you get really busy and things kind of fall by the wayside, where I stopped making art. And I was also going through lots of stuff in my life at the time, big transitions in relationships and living situation. And so I kind of got mired in that, really. And then a few years later, I started to kind of get the call to come back to art. And at first I was painting mandalas, actually, which is a really great practice. Probably lots of women are practicing that. It's really popular right now because it's just so meditative and relaxing, and it has very little demands on your creative ability. It's just fun. And so I started coming back and painting mandalas, and I immediately started to feel my whole body kind of soften. All the places in me that were holding tension and needing to be strong through all of that stuff I was going through. I could feel my body it didn't need to be strong there. It just needed to be present while I was painting. And so then, your whole inner and outer world reflect one another. And I started to realize that painting was a practice that was really soothing my soul. And so I started to dive deeper into painting because of that. So yeah, absolutely, painting is that practice. Even now, years later, when I'm kind of, I'm in something, there's a big transition happening in my life or big decisions that I need to make, I come back to painting. It's like a guaranteed practice. I often tell my own students when I'm teaching meditation as well, to have 5 go-to practices that are just super easy and they work for you. And like, they can be things like taking a bath or going for a walk in nature, all the things that are really, really simple. They require nothing from you. And for me, painting is definitely one of those practices. I used to actually only paint when I was feeling really awesome. Like, I would like kind of, because it was a spiritual practice for me, I would like make sure I was in a really meditative, peaceful state and then come and paint. And what that actually meant was that I hardly ever painted because life is happening.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel that way. Like, I do my practice every morning and I'm trying to feel that way all the time, but life happens. And then it was actually my partner that said, what if you go to the canvas anyway? Like, what if, when you're sad, you take your tears and you wipe them on your canvas and bring that into the process. And it meant I could paint more. And it meant that my paintings also became really transformative experiences, taking that energy that was really challenging and turning it into something more meaningful, or finding the wisdom in an experience, or just even making peace with the fact that I'm in an experience was enough. So yeah, painting is absolutely that practice of self-care.
That's fantastic. And right in what you've said, you've already offered so many wonderful suggestions to ladies about where they can start. And not only that, just looking at your studio behind you is making me feel really grounded and inspired. So just like being in the physical space, I can see can have such a positive effect.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so you started to mention some tips already, and I would love to talk about that next. What are some really practical takeaways that women listening could head off with, and in order to enhance their own self-care?
Yeah. I mean, there's like, anything can be a self-care practice. Brushing our teeth can be a practice of mindfulness. And like, when we can really be with that practice and we're like brushing our teeth, but some of my most mindful moments are in those small places, like your mouth is getting a massage in there. It's like, it's magic actually what's happening when you're brushing your teeth, for example, when you're present with it. And those moments and like that magic that happens from just being present is in every moment. Take a shower and be present. It's also this like magical experience of water running over your body and cleansing, and it has like, energetic importance as well as physical, and so everything we're doing can make us more present, and the present is what makes us peaceful, by being here and not so kind of distracted by all the things going on in our life that aren't actually even happening in this moment. I often tell people like, what it means to be in the present moment is to like notice where I am right now. And like right now I'm in a nice, warm, clean space that inspires me. I've got food in my belly. I'm talking to a lovely other being who's interested in important, meaningful things. And so there's like really nothing wrong right now. Most of the things that we get really stressed about are just in our head. They're not actually happening. And when we have to deal with stressful things, then that's the time to like be present and deal with stressful things. But like the vast majority of the time, we don't need to be giving our energy there. So, any practice happens to be art for me, but it really can be any practice. Drawing, being in nature, swimming, whatever it is for you, they're all amazing. They all kind of bring you to that very same place. So it's kind of about finding your doorway. And in my classes, I have a lot of women that come to paint that have always wanted to make art, but felt really intimidated by making art. They haven't learned about it, or, we've all been kind of had these stories told to us about how good we are at making art when we're young or whatever it is. And it kind of stops us from creating. And if people are interested in making art, what I would say is it's absolutely not about the product. Sometimes we make a really nice product in the end, but mostly it is about the process of being present for painting and following your intuition through that process. So you can learn technique, you can like go to a class, you can come to my class, anyone else's class, and learn technique that can help you understand how to assemble an image. But mostly what's important is that you keep just tuning inward and following the joy. And that might, for me, that's like, it leads me to certain colors of paint that make me feel joyful, or certain motions with my brush that make me feel joyful. And less about creating a plan and like kind of grinding to the end goal of the plan. It's more about how you feel through the process of creating. But that really can happen anywhere in whatever practice it is for you. Luckily, you don't need any equipment, really.
What was that?
You don't really need any equipment to be mindful and present and take self-care. That's like the most beautiful part is.
Yeah, and I love how you explain that. It's accessible to all of us. You know, there's no excuses to find joy in our surroundings. And you really beautifully describe that for women that aren't used to being present or practicing mindfulness. I feel like the way you described how to do it is really accessible too. So thanks for that. And when it comes to painting, another question I had is for the woman that maybe isn't yet an artist or doesn't think she is, aside from learning through you at your amazing courses, you know, what are some things that she could do to set herself up to start painting tomorrow?
Yeah, for a while I was practicing it like a daily painting practice that was a little bit modeled after Julia Cameron's The Artist Way book. And she had one of her main practices. I highly recommend that book to anyone who's, a creative person and on a mindful path, because it really marries the two beautifully. But one of the main practices she uses is morning pages. And essentially it's a writing practice where you write stream of consciousness, 3 pages every morning. And what it does is it kind of unclogs the mind. Basically, like when our thoughts are in our mind, it kind of, it keeps us captive to those thoughts. And what her philosophy was, if you move it out onto paper and it's outside of you, it no longer has power over you. And so I did that practice for many years, and then started to incorporate a painting practice that was similar. So I would wake up in the morning, and you can decide on any period of time, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you have. I had my paint kind of all set out, and I would just follow my intuition, stream of consciousness painting. And most of the time it was just kind of these big smeary papers with color, but I was learning and practicing how to not censor myself. So when I reached for even a color that I was like, whoa, I'm using hot pink, that's like not really my jam normally, but there's something about it that was really satisfying, and it's on a piece of paper, so it's kind of disposable. I'm not going to sell it, I don't have any pressure. You're not making anything, but just allowing yourself to follow that intuition and make fun marks. And sometimes images would appear that were really surprising also, that gave me insights about how I was showing up in that day and what was on my heart. And so that can also happen. But yeah, I would just recommend just setting yourself up. Daily is helpful because you kind of get the flow going. Whereas if you have periods of time between creativity, you kind of have to like prime the pump again. Even, I've been painting for years, but if I step away from a painting for a period of time, I actually need to like make a leap basically to get back into the painting. So yeah, kind of a regular practice is really helpful. Same with painting with kids, actually. If you're really stuck, invite kids to come and paint with you, and they will show you exactly what it looks like to create and make art with joy.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I could try that with my own kids. And of course, I love everything about what you just said. So many good little nuggets, and especially the piece around how I'm just thinking how women can be so self-critical all the time. So that part of like not critiquing yourself and just going with the flow and trusting your intuition, like magic.
Absolutely, that voice is mostly wrong. We aren't that voice. If there's like anything that I want my students to walk away from, is that inner voice that's critiquing and narrating everything is not at all who we are. It's just this narration happening in the background, and it's interesting to notice, but then also like move through and beyond, because it's not offering anything particularly meaningful and helpful to you in this moment. And there's a voice underneath that voice, like the true voice. If you listen a little bit deeper, there's another conversation happening, and it has like really important information, valuable information for you. But the first voice that jumps in is mostly just nonsense.
Yeah, sweet. I totally agree. And it's the perfect segue, because I want to jump into that deeper level of self-care. On the surface, often what we need, is to take care of our immediate needs. But do you find there's some commonalities under what's going on at the deeper level when it comes to self-care?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like most of the women that come and paint with me that I work with, and even myself, the work is so much about identity and like understanding who we are and what we have to offer. You know, finding meaning in our lives feels like one of the most common powerful questions that people are asking. And then of course that flows out in lots of different ways. What does that mean in my relationships? What does that mean about me as a mother, my work, all those things? But I feel like women are challenging the parts of the identity they've accumulated that aren't fulfilling them, or are keeping them, you know, contained in some way or limited in some way, even suffering in some way. You know, we accumulate identity that causes a lot of suffering, and so, you know, our practice of making art, but again, any practice of self-care and mindfulness can really be a practice of moving into like an inner spaciousness where less and less of that identity that's not helpful can even come with you. Because in the inner spaciousness, it's peace, it's love, it's compassion, it's all of those qualities that make the heart feel easeful. And so, yeah, any practice that you're going to kind of, it's like you get imprinted every time you go to that place of inner wisdom, you get imprinted with that sense of peace more and more. And so then when you're out in your day, you're also way less entangled and identified with that other identity that wasn't helpful. And over time, you fully can realize, like, I never was that. I never was that thing. Like, I thought I was, and people told me I was, and all of that. But we're way bigger, and we're way bigger and more powerful than that.
Yeah. Yes, and it's that, you know, that ripple effect. It strikes me that that's why it's so great to be consistent with your practice or your artwork, just to continually remind yourself of who you really are, and it will help you more easily release, you know, that identity that you might have grown out of.
Totally. And like, just to carry on with that theme for a moment, like consistency, it really is key, whether it's a meditation practice or a painting practice or whatever it is, because it feels like, in my experience of having any sort of repetitive practice, and I've had meditation practices for, you know, decades now, every time you go into the same practice, you go into a new layer, a new depth of that practice. And if we're kind of all over the place, we experience a certain layer in each one of those practices, but it's hard to like go into them. It's a different experience when you build a relationship with a practice. You have a doorway that you're invited in with more and more ease, and can find more depth and insight every time you arrive. And it also, you know, the mind also wants to be like entertained all the time, basically. It's so distractible. And so when we do lots of different things, the mind is also like super activated, and it's all interested, a little bit like a child or a puppy. And I find, you know, especially with my meditation practice, one of the things I tell my meditation students is do the same practice every single day for the same amount of time. And ideally, you want to bore the mind into like surrender in that practice. It doesn't need to be activated. It doesn't need to be thinking about things or entertained. We want the mind to a little bit get so bored, it leaves you alone for a little while. So that happens definitely in meditation practice, and also in art making. Yeah, ideally, you kind of go into this inner trance place where the mind isn't present anymore. It's kind of checked out. Often I'll listen to a podcast or have music on in the background while I'm painting. So it kind of gives the mind a place to hang out and be entertained. But then it's not involved at all in the creative process. It's busy. So then something else you can create from a deeper inner place.
Genius. Well, Angela, I'm sure we could talk to you all day about all of these great nuggets that you have for us. But before I let you go, I would love to know if you have any final thoughts, and then definitely how everyone can connect with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. And I'm just so happy always to connect with other women, especially who are doing work in the world that is helping women wake up to who they are and feel more empowered and alive in their life. So I just want to say thank you to you for doing the work that you're doing too. And yeah, people can connect with me on my website is probably a really good way. It's angelagollat.com, and you can check out all my artwork on there, as well as check out my classes. I have a new e-course that's online now, so you can actually paint with me from home. It's a 5-week e-course where you can be in your pajamas and drink coffee and paint along.
Sweet. Well, that's fantastic, and I'll be sure to share the links to those resources. And I want to thank you, Angela, and I want to thank everybody that's watching on behalf of Angela and I. And we want you to get out there and take care of you. That's what this is all about. So bye for now.